The ship Nova Dawn floated near a cold, dark planet that had no name. Captain Laura sat in her chair, staring at a strange signal coming from the surface. It repeated every 30 seconds, soft, low, and not human. Her crew was excited. This could be first contact, one of them said. But Laura felt something strange in her chest. They landed near a thick forest. No buildings, no people, no signs of life. Just silence. The air was heavy. The trees were black and still. Hours later, crewman Taylor went to check the scanners. He never came back. No scream, no struggle. He was just gone. They searched everywhere, but it was like he vanished into thin air. That night, something moved between the trees, fast and silent. Laura watched the shadows. She realized something terrible. They weren't alone. And whatever lived here had just chosen its first victim. The forest around the camp was silent, but the crew felt watched. Captain Laura ordered guards at every corner. No one spoke much. Fear was growing fast. At dawn, they found Ben's body near the trees. His neck was sliced clean, like by a laser. There was no blood, no footprints, nothing. Dr. Keller looked at the wound and whispered, "This was done with technology, not claws." Panic spread through the team. This was not a wild animal. This was something smart, something hunting them. That night, strange clicking sounds came from deep in the forest, slow and steady, moving in circles around the camp. Then, all power shut down. Lights died. Screens went black. Someone screamed, short and sharp, and then silence. Another crew member gone. Laura called out, but there was no answer. The darkness was alive. Something was hunting them, and it was only just beginning. Dr. Keller knelt by the last spot where the crew member vanished. No blood, no struggle, just an empty space and strange burn marks on the ground. "This isn't nature," he said. "It's a message." Captain Laura looked at the forest, her hand tight on her weapon. The trees looked like they were breathing, swaying without wind. Suddenly, the signal from the planet changed. Now it sounded like a whisper, repeating the same word in a broken voice. "Leave." But it was too late. The ship's systems were failing. Communications were dead. They were cut off. That night, a shape moved between the trees, tall, thin, and fast. One guard fired. The bullet passed through smoke. Then the guard vanished, pulled into the dark without a sound. Laura realized something chilling. This was no accident. The message was not an invitation. It was a trap, and they had already walked in too deep. Captain Laura gathered the remaining crew inside the main tent. Fear was on every face. No one wanted to go outside. Dr. Keller tried to boost the ship's signal, but the power core was failing fast. "We're stuck here," he said, voice shaking. Then the whispering signal returned, louder now, repeating, "You were warned." The forest around them began to glow with strange lights, soft blue orbs floating between the trees. One of the crew stepped outside, drawn by the lights. Before anyone could stop him, a long, sharp object shot out of the dark and pierced his chest. He was dead before he hit the ground. Laura screamed for everyone to stay back. The crew was falling apart. People argued. Some cried. Others loaded weapons, ready for a fight they didn't understand. Laura knew the truth now. They hadn't made first contact. They had walked into a hunting ground, and they were the prey. The crew stayed awake all night, weapons pointed at the forest. Every shadow looked like death. Captain Laura sat near the fire, eyes red from no sleep. Dr. Keller worked quietly, trying to power the signal booster with backup batteries. "If we can't call Earth now, we die here," he said. Then, just before dawn, the Ords returned, but this time they came closer. Slowly, they floated into the camp. One hovered near a soldier's face. He froze. It scanned him with a thin red beam. Then it flew away. The forest fell silent again. "They're studying us," Laura whispered. choosing who to take next. Suddenly, loud metal clicks echoed from the trees. More shapes appeared, tall and thin, not fully solid, like shadows in armor. The crew opened fire, but bullets passed through like smoke. One figure moved behind a soldier and touched his neck. He dropped dead. The rules of war had changed. The survivors were down to just a handful now. Captain Laura could barely keep her thoughts straight. The forest was alive, moving around them like it had a mind of its own. The strange figures, those tall, shadowy hunters, were everywhere, circling the camp, but never fully attacking. They seemed to be toying with them, picking them off one by one. Laura called a meeting. "We need to fight back. If we don't, we'll all die here." But as she spoke, the forest seemed to answer her. The whispering signal came again, louder, and this time, it didn't say leave. It said, fight. Laura's heart pounded. Was it a trap? Were they leading them into more danger? But there was no choice. She gave the order to move out and try to reach the ship's control room, hoping to get enough power to escape. Little did they know, the real battle was about to begin, and they were walking straight into it. The crew moved in a tight, fearful group through the darkened forest, their weapons held close. The strange figures, those shadowy hunters, were still circling them, just out of reach, their glowing eyes watching every move. They hadn't attacked yet, but the air was thick with tension. The deeper they went, the darker the forest seemed to become, as if the trees themselves were closing in on them. Suddenly, one of the soldiers, Marcus, screamed. A shadowy figure had grabbed him from behind, its cold hand squeezing the life out of him. The crew opened fire, but the bullets did nothing. The figure dropped Marcus's lifeless body and disappeared into the darkness. The crew was paralyzed with fear. Laura realized the truth. They were out of their league. These weren't just alien hunters. They were something ancient, something powerful. And they weren't going to let anyone leave. The battle for survival had just begun. Panic swept through the crew as they dragged Marcus's body away from the dark figure that had killed him. Captain Laura took charge, trying to keep everyone calm, but her own heart raced. They were trapped. The hunters were getting closer. The remaining crew members were tired, scared, and desperate. As they moved forward, one of the soldiers, Sarah, stumbled into a clearing, her eyes wide with fear. The ground beneath her feet began to crack open, revealing an enormous ancient structure hidden deep beneath the planet's surface. The walls were covered in strange, glowing symbols, pulsing like a heartbeat. "It's a temple," Keller whispered, but as he stepped forward, the symbols flared bright, and the hunters appeared. They weren't just creatures. They were protectors of this place. The moment they entered the temple, a final trap was set. Laura realized with a sickening feeling. They were not just prey. They had trespassed into a sacred ground. And there was no way out now. Inside the ancient temple, the walls seemed to breathe, pulsing with an eerie energy that made the crew's skin crawl. The hunters closed in, their glowing eyes fixed on the group. Laura's grip on her weapon tightened, but she knew it wouldn't matter. Nothing could stop them. The air grew thick with an oppressive force. The crew moved cautiously, each step echoing in the silent, dark halls. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and a deep, low rumble echoed through the temple. The hunters stopped, their attention shifting. Laura looked up to see a massive door, covered in more glowing symbols, slowly opening. Beyond it was a chamber, vast and filled with ancient technology, long forgotten by any known civilization. It was a place of power, and the crew had unwittingly triggered its defenses. "They've been waiting for us," Keller murmured. The room began to hum. The hunters were no longer the threat. The true danger was just awakening. The chamber's door slid open with a hiss, revealing a massive ancient machine at its center. It looked like a weapon, but far beyond anything the crew had ever seen, an energy source so powerful it felt like it could tear the very fabric of space apart. The hunters, once cold and silent, now stood still, almost reverent. The air was charged, crackling with raw energy. Laura felt the weight of the moment. They had discovered something that wasn't just alien. It was beyond their understanding. The machine's core began to glow, pulsing with a dangerous rhythm. "We need to stop it," Laura said, but her voice was drowned by the roar of energy building in the chamber. The hunters moved forward, as if guarding the machine. They weren't just creatures. They were its protectors. Laura's mind raced. They had to make a choice. Destroy the machine and risk everything, or let it power up and face an unstoppable force. But the moment they hesitated, the machine's hum reached a deafening crescendo. The universe was about to change, whether they were ready or not.